Welcome to This Is Hers, the space where women share their real stories of trusting themselves, finding their voice, taking risks, and building the life on their own terms. I'm Yev, and today we are hearing from women who have moved industries and countries with intention, creativity, and courage. My guest today is Jasmine Linford, a founder of Koterie. Jasmine moved from London to Paris and created a community with curated events for ambitious women who want to connect with like-minded women and grow together. Hello, Jasmine.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a very nice
I'm
intro.
happy to have you here. So let's start. For those meeting you for the first time, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, I would like to introduce myself how you introduced me, but I'll probably do it a lot shorter. So yes, as you said, I'm Jasmine. I'm the founder of Koterie. It's a social club and platform that connects ambitious women in Paris. It's a business I launched last year, but it's something that I do alongside another business I have, which is brand identity and web design, where I'm also focused in hosting, supporting ambitious women in achieving their business goals through helping them tell their brand message and just helping them show up with confidence in their business.
So you would say that these two businesses are aligned together and follow a similar goal now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've had people who have been branding clients attend Coterie events, and I've had people I've met through Coterie become clients as well. So there's definitely some synergy together. I started the branding business way before I ever had the idea of Coterie. I never really had a kind of clear vision of who that was going to serve initially, and it just slowly evolved into being mainly attracting women as clients. And I think that's just something that I've just become very passionate about over time.
So Koterie has become a meaningful space for ambitious women in a very short time. What gap did you see and why did you feel compelled to fill it in?
Yeah, so I started Coterie shortly after I arrived in Paris, but I actually initially had the idea of it before I moved to Paris. So I was living in London previously, and I was running my business solo, and I kind of missed having that level of camaraderie in terms of when you work in an office, you have peers and colleagues who are going through the same things as you, and you can get feedback from them and ask for advice. But when you're working alone, you don't really have anyone going through similar challenges who you can have that interaction with. And so I felt personally a need to go and find that. And I attended networking events for people in a similar space as me, networking events that were focused just for women. And I found that one, they were either quite transactional in that I felt that people were there to sell their services rather than actually make connections. And then the ones that I did attend that were maybe more connection based, it wasn't really the kind of environment or vibe that felt aligned with me as a person. So then that's when I had this initial idea of maybe hosting a dinner party in a really beautiful space, specifically for women entrepreneurs, and creating a way to connect and have a beautiful moment at the same time without feeling like people are just there to have another client or way to make money from you, basically. But I never did it in London. I'm not sure why, I just never got around to it. And when I moved to Paris, I was in a new place. I didn't know anyone here. So I tried all the typical ways of trying to meet people, like the friendship apps and Facebook groups. And they did work. I've met one friend who I'm very close with now through one of those apps. But I did also find that through that, you're just meeting people often, where the main thing that you have in common is the fact that you live in Paris now. And that's not really something that you can expand on much more after a few interactions. So that's when I thought back to this initial idea that I had back in London in terms of the dinner parties and addressing the need of wanting to meet like-minded women, and then specifically wanting to meet like-minded women now that I was in Paris and I didn't have any community at all. And that's when Coterie started. So initially it just started out as one dinner party. There was no grand vision of it becoming like a platform or a social club. It was literally, I walked past a restaurant that I thought looked like the perfect place. I made a reservation. I shared my idea on social media. I just said, hey, I'm Jasmine. I just arrived in Paris. I made this reservation. And if you're an ambitious woman and you want to join me, then join me. And that was last November. And people joined me. And then I did it each month from there. And then it's just kind of evolved since then.
So, what's your focus and mission when we are talking about Koterie?
Yeah, so I would say initially it was just to meet like-minded women in Paris. And since then, it's definitely evolved beyond that. So um, I want it to be a space where, yes, you can meet like-minded women, but you can also gain support and insight as well in terms of gaining information that can help you grow in your career or help you develop your business, and also gain points where you can not necessarily just strictly be focused on like driving yourself forward, but also doing those other things that help you as well. So maybe recently we hosted a workout session, or maybe one time you might host something more creative, like a still life painting, but those things still nurture you creatively and will eventually help you in business, but it's not directly just focused on strategy or something that's like strictly business focused.
Yeah, and activity also helps people connect, I suppose.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. What was your first ambition growing up?
I would say the first one that I can remember is I wanted to be a fashion designer because I was obsessed with fashion magazines. But then I realized that actually I didn't want to be a fashion designer. I wanted to work at a fashion magazine. And that was probably the ambition that lasted the longest when I was young. So I wanted to be in like Devil Wears Prada, this kind of environment, working for a big magazine. And yeah, that's what I went to university with, the idea that I would become a journalist. I studied sociology, so I wanted to have some kind of field of expertise that I could draw knowledge from in my writing. And yeah, it evolved over time. Eventually, I went from wanting to work in like magazines and editorial to wanting to work in content marketing. And then eventually I landed in content and marketing within tech.
Right. So, when you were already interning in magazines, what did those early environments teach you?
Um, so I did a few internships. I would say from the age of like 17 onwards. And it would be like 2 or 3, maybe up to a month. I think the longest one I did was 3 months at different publications, lifestyle publication. And I would say growing up, I still am to some extent, but growing up, I was like extremely, extremely shy. And being in those environments, it forced me to not be so shy, because especially when you're in like an editorial space at intern level, you're not necessarily doing this, but as you gain more and more experience, like your opinion is valuable, because that's the whole point of what you're creating. You know, you're creating content and writing articles that are about your opinion, and you want to come up with ideas and pitch ideas. And I think I was very shy in terms of, if someone didn't speak to me, I wouldn't speak back to them, which isn't great if you have an idea and you want to share it and you want to write something. So I think that's something that I definitely developed while there. But I would also say that maybe my shyness was also a benefit as well, because anyone who worked in like editorial or fashion industry knows that interns are not usually the best treated, and you get like the most boring tasks, like nothing physically draining, but you'll be like doing returns for fashion brands to photo shoots, and you'll just be going all over London all day and you're knackered. Because I was shy, you know, I wouldn't complain. Be quiet and get on with it. So everyone really liked me. So that allowed me to get better opportunities, because it's like, yeah, Jasmine will just do it. She's good. So it had pros and cons.
So your year abroad in Hong Kong, did it shift anything in how you saw yourself and the world, and how do you reflect on it?
Yeah, so I did a year abroad as part of my degree. So I did 2 years in the UK, 1 year in Hong Kong where I studied journalism, and then another year back in the UK. And I would say that going to Hong Kong was like the highlight of my degree. I often ask myself, if I didn't do that year, would it have been worth it? And I'm not sure it would have. But in terms of living in Hong Kong itself, yeah, it was definitely an eye opener. So this was 10 years ago. I mean, Hong Kong is a bit different now, but at the time, um, there was a very, very big international community, specifically with people from like the UK, the US, Australia, English speaking countries. So it was quite easy for me to navigate and easy to fit into. But at the same time, the Hong Kong culture is really, really strong. So it was a comfortable exposure to something new. And I think it just really showed me like how many different ways of living life there is. Because I've been in London my entire life. I think, especially when I was going through this editorial phase, the only other place I would have imagined myself living is like New York. But then in Hong Kong, like you're exposed to so many different people from so many different countries who have so many different career goals and experiences. And it just made me really open to learning more about what was possible. And after that, I traveled a ton. And again, those experiences did the same thing in terms of like opening my eyes and always also being open to living in other places. And I'm in France now. So yeah, it was very pivotal. I love Hong Kong. Like I'm always happy to go back there. I met my husband there, so it has like a very strong emotional connection to me. But it was like a world opener, you could say.
All right. What was your first "I don't belong here" moment?
Whoa. I don't know. I feel like I've had many. So thinking about the first one is quite difficult, but I think in many ways it kind of ties back to me being shy. And I've definitely been in environments that I think really optimize for extroverts. And there's moments where you're sitting there and maybe people are interacting in a certain way. And then for me, it's just so overwhelming to even comprehend that people can do that naturally. And then just thinking about how to get myself to that level was really hard. And I think my awareness and experiences with that has definitely been something that I fed into Koterie as well. Like specifically for dinner parties, like thinking about how people are going to be seated next to each other and how easy it's going to be to strike up a conversation with the person next to them. Or maybe like curating experiences where the guest size is capped at a certain number, just because me personally, having been in rooms where there's feels like there's too many people that I feel like I have to interact with, it can just feel really, really stressful. Yeah, I can't think of a specific moment, but it would always be that theme of my personality doesn't match this environment.
But you also leveraged it in a very nice way, because the level of curation of the events are fantastic, and the way that you really think through like how people would make a conversation, people who do not know each other,
Mhm.
preparing the cards with the topics, etc. It really helps. So, like this, something that, was a little bit of a discomfort really helps creating this specific environment that is very positive and very beneficial.
Yeah, thank you.
You went from lifestyle editorial to content marketing to big tech. What pushed each transition?
So the lifestyle editorial, that's what for a long time I envisioned myself going into. So that was very natural. I left university. That was like the first proper job opportunity that I had. And so I went for that. And that one was working for like a very, very small publication. It was literally me, an editor, and the founder. And so it was really small. The business had maybe started a year before I joined. So it was at the very early start of the journey, which was great because it meant that I was an editorial assistant, but it allowed me to actually still be able to touch on more things. And that's actually where I developed more of my skills in terms of like brand design and web design and visual design as well, alongside writing. I was there for about a year, and I think the small size of the team had its own challenges, and it wasn't necessarily the best environment after a little while to be in for me personally at this level of my career. And the next job I got was actually working at a company that my friend worked at, and she referred me and I got that job. So that was in B2B content marketing. So it's like the complete different end of the spectrum from where I was, because I was writing about like fashion and beauty and wellness. And then I was writing about operational excellence and cryptocurrency and all these different B2B topics just on the quite complete other end. But it was cool for me to see that I could flex my skills in completely different worlds and I could still be good at what I do. And so I was there for a while, and then eventually another referral. Actually, every job since then has been a referral. Another referral. to Amazon. And that was copywriting. So I was still using the same skills, but in like a B2C context. And obviously Amazon sales focused. And then from there, I went to Meta, which was content design. So that's like copywriting and UX design combined, which was cool because I feel like throughout all these roles, I kind of started out very focused on writing, but the design elements like naturally grew. Like initially it was like me just kind of volunteering design, but then eventually it actually became part of my official role. And then I left that job quite quickly. I didn't stay for long because it's not really what I expected it to be. And I'd been running my brand design business on the side as like a side hustle. And at the time that I got the Meta job, I had already been kind of thinking, okay, I want to do this full time. And then I got the offer and I was like, that had been my dream job actually for a really long time. So I got the offer and I went, and then it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So then I just said, okay, I'm going to go all in with the brand and web design business. And I did that. And I've been running that business for more than 5 years now.
What was new for you in becoming a founder after years of content marketing jobs in other companies?
I mean, in working for yourself, there's obviously a lot of freedom involved in terms of dictating when you work, where you work. And I think, especially when you have a creative role as an employee, there's a lot of pressure to like manufacture creativity at a pace that it naturally doesn't actually occur at. And then when you work for yourself, well, in the way that I work for myself and the structure that I set up, it's a lot more flexible that I can do creative elements of work when I am actually in a creative mood than just do it when it needs to be done. So that was a big thing. But at the same time, you have all the cons of you don't have a steady salary and you're only paid if you have a specific client, where when you're in a company, it's just constant. But at the same time, I did really enjoy, in terms of having my own business, I do really enjoy being able to tie something I've created, like being able to say like, oh, that specific thing earned me this amount of money. And with that amount of money, I was able to have this specific experience. Like I really like to be able to see that whole picture. Whereas when you have a salary, like there's not a specific task that you can tie to X amount of money.
What was the moment when you recognized your side hustle being maybe the real thing?
I would say it's really just a case of how much money you're making at a certain amount of time and whether you feel like if I was full time, I could match I could match what I already have from my salary job. And also just like a level of demand. Like when I got to a point where I feel like, oh, my job is in the way of doing this thing that I want to do. I had savings, like definitely there's like all the kind of boring things in terms of like, do I have enough savings? Realistically, how easy would it be for me to go back to work if I went back to work? And I think also giving yourself a timeline of like, if I quit my job and this doesn't work out, after how many months am I actually going to be like, okay, let me go back to where I was before and refigure things out, and not feeling mentally like that would be a failure, just accepting that that could be part of the process and it's just part of the risk that you're taking.
Right. I like the angle that it wasn't completely a leap of faith, but it was like a calculation, assessment of the time that you see the demand and you see that it's absolutely feasible.
Yeah, for sure. I'd been doing it for quite a while at that point and like gradually raising my prices more and more. And then when I felt confident in my own skills, that I could raise my prices to a point where it would match my salary or just match a number that I can live off. That's when I felt able to do it. It definitely wasn't just a random leap of faith decision at all, which I really wouldn't recommend doing that.
What was a key decision that changed the trajectory of your life?
Honestly, I would probably just say deciding to go to Hong Kong. I knew nothing about Hong Kong at all. And I just had a list of options of places that I could potentially do a year abroad. And I just felt like a natural draw to going there without any specific reason. And then I went there and yeah, I think, as I said earlier, it just opened up a lot for me mentally.
Was there a moment you almost walked away from the goal or the path you wanted to go, and what kept you going?
Yes. You know, when you're running a business like I'm doing, like a creative business, your income is client based. So there's occasionally times in the year where you have like a huge influx of client work and everything is very consistent. But at the same time, there's also periods where it's complete crickets and silence. And those are the moments when you really think like, what am I doing? Like, was this a good decision? Um, I think honestly, the thing that kept me going is luck in terms of when things feel like it's at a point where this is not working out. Something always just happens to come through with good timing. So there's not like a specific thing that I'm telling myself for a specific practice that I'm doing to keep me motivated. It's literally just the universe. And just someone else happening to need a service I offer at the right time. But I guess I do have some level of blind faith as well that something will come through at the right time.
What did you have to unlearn to grow?
I think there's one thing that I'm still in the process of unlearning, but I'm making progress on it, but I wouldn't say that I've completely unlearned it. It's to an extent, it's like perfectionism, but also the fear that someone else can't execute things in the way that I want them to be executed. So then that prevents me from like delegating tasks that someone else could likely do. And it would alleviate me quite a bit and allow me to like focus on other things and not even do more work, but just have more time to like rest. And that's something that I've been doing more and more over the last year or so in terms of finding people who I trust to do tasks, to allow me to show up better in other aspects of life and business. But it's a journey that I'm still on for sure.
Did you ever have to struggle with people assigning labels to you? What were their assumptions and how did you manage it?
I think the one thing that comes to mind is from childhood and tying back to the theme of, you know, being introverted and being shy. And that's definitely a label that was tied to me and it's completely true. But I think for me, the issue is more that it's often a negative label. It's like, oh, sorry, she's shy, or like, oh, you're introverted. And, you know, extroversion is often shown or spoken about as like a positive trait. I don't think one or the other should be considered more positive than the other. You know, they just both are. And I think for me, it took me a while to realize that it's actually not a bad thing to be an introvert or to be like ashamed of the fact that you're not the one to, you know, be the loudest in the room or to be the one to like drive the vibe of the room and, you know, to be that person who's like the automatic, I don't know what the word is, but just to be that person who's like naturally outspoken and outgoing. And that, yeah, it was like quite a empowering moment to understand that there's actually strength in being the opposite of that as well.
Right. I can say that this is something that maybe was an issue for me too. I
Mhm.
don't think that I was like labeled as shy, but I did definitely knew that like me being an introvert is something that um, limits me to a certain extent. And I was trying to also understand like how to navigate, like if I should fight it, if I should pivot it, should I accept it, what's the way around it, because you're right, this is the system that really empowers extroverts and this is just what it is.
Yeah.
And what helped me really, I have found a book. I don't know. I just saw it by accident on Tech Talks, I think. It was a book by Susan Cain, I think is the author. Yeah.
Same book that did the same thing for me. Yeah, it's the same book. Yeah,
Yeah.
I read that book and you know, it speaks so much about, I mean, it's from a very American perspective, where I think when most people think about America, you think of like this extroverted character. But I think even not being from America, it's across a lot of cultures, extroversion is seen as the ideal way to be. And that book for me also, it really was like the moment I was like, oh wow, like it's okay to be quiet.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Have you ever felt like an imposter or an outsider?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Um, but I would say, actually, interestingly, the times that I felt most like that have been in professional jobs, not working for myself, but working for other companies. And I always have this weird feeling of like, I've like tricked them into hiring me. It takes me a really long time. It can take me maybe like 6 months or more to be like, actually, no, I am really good at that. I know I'm good at it all the way through the interview process before I get the job. But as soon as I'm there, I just have this weird feeling of, am I going to meet their expectations? So yeah, it does feel a bit like an imposter thing. Uh, But I think in the work that I do for myself, in terms of like running my own business or running Koterie, it feels, I don't have that feeling because I feel like what I'm doing feels more natural. Like for Koterie, it came out of like a personal need. So like I'm just extending that. It's not like I've been hired by this company to do this thing. It's something that I'm naturally doing. And the same for the branding. Like I just loved doing brand and web design and things like this. So it's just like a natural thing that I'm doing.
right, because your own company is an alignment with your personality,
Yeah,
pretty much.
exactly. Yeah.
How did moving from London to Paris reshape your sense of identity, personally or professionally?
I would say I grew up in London. I was born in London and I'm very proud of being from London. So I think that's something that I never want to like lose as part of my identity. And I think it's also when you're somewhere else, like being in Paris, you become so aware of the fact that so many things that you do or the way that you think is like shaped by where you're from. And it just makes me like so much more conscious of it. But I think having had like so many different exposures and experiences in terms of like traveling to different countries, my mind is gradually like less and less fixed in terms of like the way I see things. So Paris, I don't feel like I've had like a major evolution, but I would definitely feel like I am to an extent at home in Paris because of the pace and the environment. Like London is my home in terms of defining my story and like culturally, but in terms of like how I want to live my life, I feel like Paris is a much better match to that. So in certain ways, it's allowed me to bring out a bit more of myself because the pace is just different and it allows me to like reflect a bit more. And also being in this space that's completely different made me do things that I wouldn't have done in London. Like, as I said, I had the idea for something like Koterie in London for a really long time, but I wasn't forced to do it until I was in a new environment and I actually had like a much stronger need for it. So it's just forced me to do more things and maybe bring out more of what was already there, but I just hadn't had the opportunity to discover it or bring it out more previously.
I do feel strongly with this direction, searching for something that is contributing to your lifestyle, to your identity,
Mm.
rather than, coming to a new place and just like adjusting to a new place and losing your personality because you want to fit in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of aspects of like French and Parisian culture that I love, but there's also lots of aspects that come from being from the UK that I love as well. And I would never want to lose that just to fit in or just to feel like I'm more like palatable or something like this.
um, have there been moments when you feel pressure to be smaller, quieter, and more convenient? And how did you navigate?
Well, I was really quiet. So yeah, I don't think I could ever be in any situation that makes me feel more quiet. But I would say, yeah, the only time that I maybe felt that is in those similar experiences where I mentioned having the imposter syndrome, where you're like maybe too scared to say something or do something in case the fact that you're an imposter might be revealed. Yeah, but I would say, yeah, usually it's a case of the opposite. Like there's situations where I feel like I need to be more loud and more outgoing. That's a much more common thing that I've experienced. But as I've grown older, I find myself less and less in spaces that I feel that way because I think I have more control about the spaces that I'm in and like more confidence in just not being in spaces that I don't feel comfortable in. And even when I am, like, I don't currently feel the need to be someone that I'm not. I'm kind of like, it's fine. I'm happy to be quiet over here.
What's the bravest choice you've made in your career or your life?
I think the bravest choice is definitely choosing to quit what was essentially my dream job and a job at a very good company, very good, very financially stable company in order to do my own business. And then also, I mean, I feel like a lot of the things I do, they're not like completely sudden, you know, it's not like it's a decision that's come out of nowhere with no preparation and no leading up to it. So I've done things that maybe feel big from the outside, but it's taken me quite a long time to get to that stage where it feels comfortable. So yeah, like even like posting about Koterie online, like some people say to me, oh, that's like insane, you know, meeting up with a bunch of people that you never met before. But I had already been meeting people like one on one, like gradually when it came to just inviting 16 people to meet, it didn't feel so much as a strange thing because I was already comfortable meeting strangers before. From the outset, it just seems like an insane thing to do.
Right. How do you define success for yourself now versus when you started?
I don't know if my definition has actually changed that much. I think when I was in the phase of wanting to work in editorial and wanting to be in like a fashion magazine, I really was in love with a specific kind of lifestyle, this kind of glamorous, um, lifestyle of, you know, running around a big major city and then also having your words shared with people and like seeing your impact in like newspapers or magazines and creating something tangible that like a lot of other people could read and experience and being appreciated for that. And I think if I'm honest, the only thing that has really changed is maybe just the method that that's achieved in. Like I really like to create things and I like to create things that create impact for other people. And I think throughout the years, I've just found different formats to do that.
How do you make decisions when you don't know how things will turn out?
I leave them to the last minute. um, no, I say I leave it to the last minute, but it's more that when I'm making a decision, I want to distinguish like, is my decision based on like my emotions or my logic? And I feel like that sometimes takes me a really long time to distinguish. And I need to like sit on something for a while and be like, okay, how do I feel like this today? And then maybe I'm going to go to sleep and I'm going to feel about it differently the next day where I've like calmed down or like had more time to consider it. But I also, like, I often go to people I trust to get feedback as well, just to make sure, like, sense check my own thought system. um, I think just really not rushing into things is really important to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I do understand that a lot because when the decision is big, for example, something like very pivotal,
Mm.
I do like to just send it on the background and to keep it like mulling over in the head and to understand like how I feel about it, to really have time to process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. The danger is leaving that for too long.
Yeah. What did you have to protect in yourself to be able to build Koterie?
Boundaries for sure. So my intention with Coterie is to build a way for me to connect with other women and as well for women to connect with other women. And definitely I want it to attract a specific kind of woman, someone who's like ambitious, has already started their career, has some kind of idea or vision that they're working towards. So I think a sense of boundaries in the sense of crafting that community and myself being confident to allow it to grow in a way that stays true for that and not feeling like I have to say yes to everyone in order to keep everyone happy, because then that kind of like dilutes what's being created and the people who are already included in the community are not happy and they don't get what they're looking for. But also boundaries in the sense that, like, in order to grow Kotu, I'm very visual online. Like, my story basically tells the story of what I'm going to create through Koterie, like my own experiences, my own goals, my own needs. And I think that's really important to communicate. But I think in creating that, maybe sharing more about myself online, sometimes maybe people can feel like they closer to you or more familiar with you than you actually are because I don't know them, but they might have seen me. Um, and I think just knowing that in building community, it doesn't mean that you have to give up so much of yourself. Like you can still set your own boundaries in terms of like what's acceptable for me, what and like how you. I don't know if this makes any sense. You don't have to like give all of yourself in order to build a community. Like you can still protect yourself at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you developed any rituals around community building or creativity?
I wouldn't say, I don't know if rituals is the right word. I think it's more a sense of criteria. I think it's important to meet um, when focusing on like building community specifically and like creating those physical environments where people interact, like making sure that those spaces meet a specific criteria and also that the experience itself has certain elements that help to make that experience do what it's supposed to do. So, for example, in finding a space, I always want our gatherings to take place somewhere that's very beautiful and also somewhere that's private, because I think it makes a really big impact when you're meeting a new group of people, but that space that you're all in is for this specific group. So you know that everyone in there is there for the same purpose. And it's like, you come off the street where, like, yes, you could approach someone and like strike up a conversation with them, but you don't know how they're going to react to you. But when you enter a Koterie gathering, you know that everyone is there to be open for you and like going through that door, it just creates a different kind of energy. And I think that's really important. And then throughout the actual gathering, like having points where people can introduce themselves and maybe things that will initiate a conversation that's a bit deeper in terms of the level, just to help facilitate that connection more.
Yeah, I hear a lot of, ensuring psychological safety here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think that comes from introversion and understanding the need for that for a personal experience.
Right. Is there a self check or inner rule that keeps you aligned when life gets busy?
Um, I think it goes back to what we were saying about decision making and like just taking the time to be able to think about things. Uh, I'm not always the best at it in terms of this specific thing, in terms of like life when life gets busy and maybe working out like how to prioritize different things because I feel like I want to do every single thing. And this also goes back to the theme of delegation. I think there is a self check. I don't always listen to it.
What grounds you when things feel chaotic?
My husband, I would say, just having someone to go to and who can maybe, I know when things feel chaotic and you just have like so many different things going on in your head, and you can maybe sometimes reinflate different things or just not clearly be able to, um, like see things from afar. I feel like he's someone I can go to do that and like be like, okay, just relax and like this is actually what's going on. And then that just helps me then look at that from his perspective and then reapproach it and just relax a bit more.
How do you recharge? Are there any personal habits that you swear by?
I think, yeah, one of the best things about being in Paris is that it's very easy to just walk around the entire city and just have like a day where you're just surrounded, by like beautiful buildings and beautiful things. Like I said, I try to do everything all the time. I also do try to make sure like at least one day of the week I spend time doing that. And it just kind of brings me back to reality, I guess, to basically appreciate like where I am now and what I'm doing now rather than thinking about all the other things I need to do to go to the next stage.
Right. I do feel strongly about that too, because walking really helps somehow to really unload the pressure and put your thoughts in the right order. Because, like when you are concentrated in one place and you are like existing in the same location, I think it's easy to get really confined
Mhm.
within your thoughts, and the movement and changing the scenery a little bit. It helps this tension unclench and for everything to become easier, to feel easier, and to just let this energy be released pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. And it's not to say that in those moments I'm not also thinking about the work that I'm doing or things I need to do. It allows you to think about it clearer because in that moment you can't actually do the work. It's like then it allows you to like think about how you feel about things and think about different ways that you can approach things rather than just being at home in front of a computer where you're focused on like executing the task rather than thinking about the task.
Right. For someone listening and feeling stuck, what's one thing they can do today?
I would just say do the thing that you know that you need to do. I think often, like, and I do this myself, like we say that we're stuck or that we can't do something or we're not ready to do something or we don't know how to do something. And actually, we do. Like, it's very clear what we need to do. And it's really just a case of like not being afraid to do it. That's the biggest thing. Um, yeah. So just feel the fear and do it anyway is my favorite phrase. And I think that's usually the biggest barrier.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Do it scared is the best practice to keep
Yeah,
moving.
for sure.
What do you think other people should know about?
About me, outside of work, I like to travel a lot. I've been to, I think maybe almost 45 countries now, many frequent more than one time, which is cool. So I'm very like inspired by other cultures, food culture, art culture from around the world. I'm a very big foodie, which is partly what inspired Koterie initially. Um, And as much as I like doing the gatherings and love like connecting with women in real life, I also enjoy time alone and enjoy my own company and yeah, finding the balance between the two.
Yeah, introverts need to recharge.
Yeah.
What's one reflection that stands out to you? Like, what is a truth or a lesson that clicked everything into place in your life?
I think it's what we mentioned earlier from Susan Cain's book about being quiet, just the acceptance that it's okay to do things at a different decibel level to other people and really seeing the benefit that having the perspective of someone who is naturally more inclined to be that way can do, and that it's important to have these two different, I don't know if you call them personality types, like temperaments in the world, and just embracing that. And I think that's really come through in like the way that I communicate with in business on a personal level on lots of different ways, just feeling comfortable with just being that way naturally.
What do you hope women feel when they walk into a Koterie event for the first time?
I hope that they feel excited by the prospect of meeting people who they can connect with naturally, meeting people who are like them at the same time different to them to offer new perspectives, being inspired by the space that they're in. And I think most importantly, feeling welcome and comfortable that they can show up as who they are.
What's something people would be surprised to learn about the real work behind Koterie?
I would say that maybe uh, from the outside, the branding and the content shared, it looks very glamorous and chic, but sometimes it can be a little bit chaotic behind the scenes. And also, like a lot of time, I don't know if people can't see this. I like to think that to some extent they can, but a lot of work goes in behind the scenes to bring things to life. A lot of like communication, collaboration, operations, all these different things. The majority of it for now is just me. Hopefully, more people in the future. Yeah,
When we were arranging this recording, I was actually thinking about you have an event this day. I wonder how she's doing it.
yeah. I did most of my prep yesterday, so we're
Yeah.
good.
What's the next chapter you are stepping into, and how are you feeling about it?
I think the next chapter is just really leaning a bit more into Koterie, a lot more into Koterie, I should say, and being louder, which is ironic considering everything we said, but being maybe not louder is the word, but being more,
Visible?
yeah, more visible in terms of what's being built and not being afraid of sharing that information and yeah, just going for it basically.
Well, honestly, I think you're doing so well with promoting Koterie and telling your story. I do enjoy your videos. I'm envious a little bit because I do not do this, and I wish I will find my way to also position social profiles the right way. And I love how you connect like your personal profile and Koterie profile, and the things reinforce each other. I think it's a great system. And, your videos look like you are doing it with such ease, with a very appropriate amount of effort. And this is why, this feeling also contributes to like how the events feel, to the vibe of Coterie, that it's very, chill, it's glamorous, but it's calm, it's easy.
Thank you. That's exactly what I want to create. Like you said, it's glamorous, but also easy, to the point where you don't feel uncomfortable, but where you can also feel good, about being in a space that like uplifts you and makes you feel like good about yourself and where you are in life at the same time.
Right. Where can people connect with you or your work?
So the best place to learn more about Coterie in general is the website, but to stay up to date with all the regular events and gatherings that were happening and everything that's being rolled out in terms of the platform, I would say go to the Instagram, post quite regularly there. And for me personally, I'm on TikTok where I share a bit more about myself as a founder, and LinkedIn if you want to connect.
I will share all the links. Who would be the woman you'd love to hear on This Is Hers, and why?
There's so many different women. Um, so there's someone actually, she's very big. So if you get her, I would be tuned in. Tracy Ellis Ross. She is an American actress, but it's not necessarily that I'm like interested in her career or like following this kind of path. But I really admire her philosophy on life, on like being a woman and being like assured about like who you are and what you want for yourself and pursuing that. I always find her really inspiring to listen to.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your story with such honesty and clarity. I know it will land deeply with women who are reinventing themselves, questioning the next step, and trying to build that doesn't exist yet. So your journey shows that everything is possible with making the choices that is right to you.
Definitely.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow This Is Hers on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or our social accounts. And also, please leave a comment. It helps us reach more people who need to hear these stories.